Welcome to Your Redemptive Birth, the birth story podcast where we hear directly from women who have journeyed from medicalized births to natural ones. I'm Sarah, and together we'll hear from women who have reclaimed birth. Their stories are marked by healing, strength, and deep trust in their bodies. If these stories resonate with you, I'd love for you to follow the podcast and leave a review so more women can find hope here. And for more redemptive birth tips and encouragement, come connect with me on Instagram at Your Redemptive Birth. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your healthcare team for guidance specific to your pregnancy and birth. This is Your Redemptive Birth. Hello, Michaela. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. We just caught up a little bit before we hit record, and we discovered that we are kind of from a similar part of the country. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we're from the same part of the Midwest, and now you live out in Pennsylvania, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Wonderful. Okay, well, why don't you, before we dive into your birth stories, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do in the world, and your family.
Yeah. So I am just a kind of run-of-the-mill, average stay-at-home mom. Best job in the world.
Yeah,
hardest job in the world.
No such thing as an average stay-at-home mom.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. But no, I have two little ladies. They are going to be 1 and 3 in the spring. So we're still really in that young, vibrant age. We just spend our days just kind of surviving, but it's all really, really great.
It really is. I could not agree more as a fellow stay-at-home mom. What brought you guys out to Pennsylvania, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, my husband, he is actually a pastor here now, but that's what brought us here. We'll get actually part of that leaks into some of our birth story, but we've been here. My oldest will be 3 in the spring, and we've also been here for about 3 years. So
amazing, wonderful. Yeah. Well, now that I know that your husband is a pastor, please feel free to bring in how God was in your births, and I'm sure, obviously, he was. So, yeah, I feel like that's also something that isn't super talked about in the birth world. Like, unless you're on a specifically Christian birth platform, like sometimes we shy away from talking about how God is present in birth. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, why don't we get right into your first birth? Take us back, kind of wherever you want to start, like what you believed about birth at the time, the kind of birth experience you were hoping for, the choices you made, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So it was with my first, it was 3 years ago. We had just moved to Pennsylvania a month before we had our daughter. So all in all, we were doing a lot of transition, a lot of switching things up. What I believed about birth going into my first pregnancy was I really did want to have a natural birth, but I was also very nervous, very scared, didn't know if that was something that I could actually do. But I did have this thought in the back of my head that was like, wow, my mom did this. My grandma did this. They had both done natural births. They had both done it unmedicated. So it was something that I was like, I know I can do it, but what does it even look like? So that's kind of,
I want to say really quick that that's uncommon nowadays. That's so uncommon for your mom and your grandmother both to have still experienced like a physiological birth.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, most like this, that's where the disconnect usually begins, is from our grandmothers and our great grandmothers. And wow, yours is remarkably intact. Yeah. So that's exciting.
Well, a funny story off of that, my mom has actually shared with me that which I think is crazy that this is kind of how the conversation went, but her OBGYNs actually told her, your mom did this without medicine, so can you. So it was actually, I was very surprised to hear that was kind of the conversation that they were having at that point, because it's kind of unheard of now. So, and had somebody like really encouraged me in that, things might have felt different or gone different. So,
yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of where I was at. I was like, if they could do it, I want to try. I want to go in, I want to try. But that as things got rolling, pretty much so we'll jump into the birth part of it
Sure.
now. My water broke at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning. I didn't know that it broke though, because it was a very, very minor trickle.
Mhm.
Long story short with that, by the end of my labor and delivery, they had to break it 2 more times
Oh.
because I don't know how, but whose water breaks 3 times, I'm not sure, but mine did.
Your membranes were really, really strong.
I
Yeah.
guess so.
Mhm.
So, I didn't realize it at first. So, me and my husband actually went to buy a car, and that we were supposed to pick up. Yep. And then it wasn't until we were in the notary's office that I was like, "I can't get this trickle to stop." So, I called the OBGYN. We had decided because, we had just moved to, Pennsylvania a month earlier, and my husband had gone through this long process of for his ordination. Wonderful, but it was still kind of hard for us to decide if we would be able to do anything besides a hospital birth, just because
It's
we knew we were
tricky.
going to be, yeah, moving states. So we thought that was going to be the best route, and so we did the hospital route. So I called my OBGYN and I was like, I can't get it to stop, but it, like, doesn't feel like I'm peeing, but also at the same time, uh I don't know. It doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like it is in the movies, which I knew that it wouldn't, but at the same time, it was like, "It has to be
You
more
always
than this."
expect it to be, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also wanted to jump in and say, of course, and same with my first time birth, like, I just had a move recently before giving birth, and, like, I wasn't I don't know, I didn't know what to expect, and so we chose hospital, right? But,
Yep.
I want to make it so clear to all listeners that you can change your care team, like, 39 weeks, 40 weeks. You could days I mean, I've heard stories about women changing their person that's going to attend their birth, like, days before.
Yeah.
And so if you're feeling stuck, like, with a doctor or a midwife who's not supporting you in the choices that you're wanting to make, just change. Just fire them, find somebody else. But anyway, so
Oh,
your
yeah.
water is trickling, but it's like now it's really, really going, and you
Yep.
guys call the OB. Okay.
Yep. So we called the OB. They had me come in since I wasn't sure. They checked me, and they were like, "Yep, your water broke. You're gonna be having a baby soon. Congratulations. Let's kind of get the ball rolling." And they were like, "Let's take a quick blood pressure and send you on your way." Well, that quick blood pressure turned into a high blood pressure.
Oh,
So,
no.
yes. So, something that I had kind of suspected based off of just a few other symptoms that I had been having, like really swollen ankles. In hindsight, drinking lots of water and I couldn't pee, just all the things.
Mhm.
And so I was preeclamptic. So,
Mhm.
they sent me on my way, and at that point, they didn't really seem like super nervous, but they also didn't give me like a lot of information as to like what that would look like kind of going forward. So sent me home to get our stuff, which because we had just moved, we hadn't packed our bags yet. So
Oh.
we went and packed our bags and moseyed our way over. And again, moseyed our way over. Yeah. So then we ended up in the we ended up going in labor and delivery, and we got checked in, and at this point, I think this is the part. At this point, we still wasn't experiencing any contractions, and so get in there. And after we were checked in, they decided that that's when the conversation of all, what do we
Mhm.
do next? What do we do
Right.
next? You're not contracting. Your water's been broken since 8 a.m. And you're preeclamptic.
Preeclamptic,
Yep.
yeah, mhm.
So that
Preeclampsia is not anything to mess around
it's
with, and
it's
and
not.
this is when we're grateful that we have medical interventions,
Yes.
so
Yes.
bless the Lord.
Yes. And that is so yes, very true. But it was still one of those things that when I told them that I wanted to go unmedicated, they weren't telling me no, but they also were like, the only way for you to get rid of preeclampsia is to deliver.
Deliver your baby,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. So, at that point, they did ask if I wanted something, and I knew I was on the time clock. Once you're in a hospital, 24 hours is your time frame of before they say that they want you they want pretty much they want the baby out within 24 hours. But I was nervous that if I didn't start contracting, things weren't progressing, that time clock was going to then turn into my worst fear. My worst fear in the end, I don't know why, but I didn't really want to have a C-section. So, um, yeah,
Yeah.
that,
No, that's a very common like worst case scenario fear for a lot of women.
yeah.
Mhm.
So at that point, when they gave me the option, I did decide that I would do the cervical ripener. And
Yeah.
so as soon as I took that, things picked up pretty quick. I didn't do pitocin. I just did the cervical ripener at first. And then uh I would say probably I took that around 4 or 5. Things started to kick up. And by 11 p.m., that's kind of when things were shifting. But in the midst of that, one part that I will say that might be helpful for some of the listeners is I did have a nurse that was not the most helpful when it came to wanting to do it unmedicated. I had asked a couple of things, a couple of questions about like, is there any way that I can like, do you have any guidance? Just do you have any general guidance? And I could tell that she just was like, not until you have the pain relief. So that was kind of unhelpful. And but not putting all the blame there by any means. For myself, I just was not confident. Like, how much longer can I stand the pain that I'm in without an epidural? It was kind of like this number in my head that if I could have someone tell me you'll be done in 2 hours, you
Mm.
can make it. You can do 2 hours. But if this is going to be 8 to 12 hours, I can't do this for 8 to 12 hours. So it was probably around 11 o'clock at night when I was like, I just need that epidural. So I got the
And no
not
pitocin at this point still?
still not at this
Wow.
point. Yeah, no.
Okay.
So in hindsight, as we go forward and talk about the next birth, I always think to myself, if I would have just kept going for like, I comparing the way that I felt when I asked for the epidural to where I was in transition with my second, I regret that I asked for the epidural. But I
Mm.
just didn't have some of the tools too that I did for my second birth, which we can get into again. So I got the epidural and my labor stalled. So then we were there, did the whole thing. It was somewhere throughout. It was already into the next day. At least, I wanna say at least 12 hours. Then they were like, "Your vitals aren't looking super great, so let's go ahead, let's start Pitocin." So that's when we started Pitocin. Finally, kind of I was complete then. They started me on some mag just so that I wouldn't have a seizure during, labor, and that did not make me sick, which I was very thankful for because a lot of women, they say it does, it makes them sick, but, just very weak. So, ended up after doing the mag, pushing for 3 hours, and at some point along the line, I was like, "I can't imagine that they will let me push much longer,"
Okay. Mhm.
um, but pretty much at that point, I was like, "Okay, I just gotta get this baby out." And so we just there was another woman screaming in the other room, and we were just going back and forth with our screams, it felt like, and we
Yeah.
we just powered that baby out. And in the process of that, I had a nice large tear that really kind of hurt as they were stitching me up. And this is the part where it gets a little fuzzy. I know that I did skin to skin with her, and they were stitching me. The part that I remember the most was the stitching and everything. And then after that, they hauled me off to recovery, and I stayed there for 24 hours to do another mag drip for after, and then another 24 hours so that they can monitor everything. So, um, all in all, that was my medicated
Okay.
birth, which ne- a lot of it necessary, but
Mhm.
parts of it were, in hindsight, sometimes I look back and regret and think, "Ah, could I have done it had I known what to expect?" Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. You're saying, could you have done it, like, had, with the Pitocin and with the cervical ripener and then just no epidural, you're saying? Like,
Um, Actually,
or
just
what are you
the
saying?
with just the cervical ripener.
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah.
remember
Mhm.
it.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Because your labor stalled with the
Oh, yeah,
epidural,
that's
right?
fine, that's fine, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, because there's one point where I was, doing dilation station on the back of the toilet, sitting backwards on the toilet,
Oh,
yeah,
nice. Good.
and
Yeah, in the
yep, in
hospital.
the hospital,
Yes.
yep. Yeah,
Good.
actually, it was, something that will stick in my mind forever. The guy that was coming in to, like, draw my blood, he
Uh-huh.
was like, "Well, this is kinda strange, I've never done this before." I was like, "Oh, really?
Oh,
Okay."
great.
Y
Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. So, all that said, it was at that point that I was sitting there and I was like, I can do this for a little longer."
Mhm.
And a little longer is all I think I would have needed after having felt it the second time.
I totally get what you're saying. And I think that that's so key for women to hear. It's like there's no way to know how long your labor is going to be, and everyone is different. And yeah, that first one you don't know what transition feels like, so you don't know when you're getting close,
Mhm.
And that's the thing, birth is a mystery. I thought felt that same way with my first birth. I was like, if I could just know, oh, this is only going to be a couple more hours, maybe I could do it.
Yeah.
But if it's going to be 24 hours, like there's just no way.
Right. Right.
And our brains play such tricks on us, and I think I hear so many women say too that, like, just focus on the next contraction ahead of you, just one at a time, just one at a time. And if we can't think about hours into it, all we can think about is that next
Yeah.
one, but it's so hard to do
Yeah.
in the moment.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Absolutely. Definitely. Cool. Well, I think that that's a beautiful recap of what happened with your first birth. Maybe you would like to take us into that second birth experience, how you prepared differently, what you wanted to leave behind, what you felt was going to be more important this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Take us back.
Absolutely. So, yeah, with the second birth, life in general, what just felt a little bit more stable, a little less stressful.
Mm.
The biggest stressor I had going into my second birth was just who was going to be here to watch my oldest.
Oh.
Especially, we live 9 hours away from most of our family. Since I'm a stay-at-home mom, she's kind of stage 10 clinger in the best way possible, but doesn't
Mhm.
really very shy even outside of that. So once we got
Mhm.
that kind of figured out, I got a plan in place with my mom and my sister where they were going to be kind of coming into town. My mom was going to come into town about 2 weeks before my due date, with the first one, with my first daughter, I ended up going, I think, about a week early. And so it was kind of just like playing it by ear and giving it 2 weeks so that we didn't have to fully uh worry too much, that if she did come, if my second did come a little bit early, it wasn't that big of a deal. We were hoping it wasn't much more than the 2 weeks, and it didn't end up being, so that was good. So my mom ended up coming on a Tuesday, and it was the best timing. Um, and once she got here, my sister was supposed to be coming later, and it was her hope that she would make it for the delivery. My mom was going to stay at home with my little and my sister's little, and and then my sister was going to come to the hospital with me and my husband. But she was supposed to come like a week after my mom, and hoping that we would make it. But then once my mom got here, she started to have a little bit of FOMO, and she's like, "I'm pretty much have all of work off for the next 2 weeks, so can I just come now?" And I was like, "Absolutely, please do." Yes.
Please do.
So my mom was in on the Tuesday, and then she ended up coming in on she was gonna come in on the Friday. So Friday comes along, she's on her way, and at around 10 o'clock in the morning on Friday, I was like, "Okay. What's that?" I was like, "Hmm." And then it started happening a little bit more consistently. And so we were chatting with my sister on her way, and she works in women's health. And she's like, "Ki-"
I was gonna say, what's your sister's perspective
yeah.
on birth and what was her birth like? Just a quick recap so we can kind of get a little synopsis of who this
Oh,
person is that's gonna be joining you at
yeah.
the
Yep. She
hospital.
works in women's health. So
Yeah.
very familiar with all of it. She's not on the labor and delivery side, but she's on the clinical, like pre-baby side of things. So yeah, she knows her
Mhm.
stuff. Like, she's going to be my biggest cheerleader. So that is who we
Absolutely.
are.
So she's your doula. She's your
Absolutely.
doula,
Yep.
essentially.
Yep. That's
Yes.
who we're
Love
inviting
that.
into our birth space, and that's who we
Gorgeous.
want in our birth space. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. So she's like, "Do me a favor, download an app. Let's start timing those contractions." And I was like, "Okay, but I don't think this is it. This is just Braxton Hicks, right?" Yeah. So downloaded the app, started. They were like 45 minutes apart. I was like, "It's nothing. It's fine."
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
we do me and my mom continue with the day. My 2-year-old, put her down for her nap. It's like 1 o'clock. And by then it's like 30 minutes apart. Okay. My sister
Mhm.
comes at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and by then it's like 15 minutes apart, and I'm like, I can't sit comfortably anymore. Okay. So, but at this time I still wasn't convinced that I was in labor. They're going to think
Mhm.
I'm
That's the best
yes,
way. That's the best way to make labor go fast is just to ignore it as long as you
we're in
possibly
denial,
can.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so I was like, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think we should? And then I said to her, I said, I know what this feels like. I think I know what this feels like, but I'm not sure." She's like, "Okay, let's go ahead and call your husband." And I said, "Okay, I guess we'll call him." So we call him, and I had purposefully he didn't know that I had been having contractions throughout the day because it was a Friday. It's the last day of the week. If it ended up being anything that wasn't actually labor, he still had to preach on Sunday. So it was like, let's just let him finish up everything that he needs to do without distraction. And so I called him around probably 3:30, 4 o'clock. I was like, "Hey, can you come home? It's time to go to the hospital." And he's like, "Okay, yeah, yeah. Do you do it like now, or do I have 10 minutes to wrap something up?" I was like, "No, you should probably come now." And so he came, and he came home, and you think that we would have learned our lesson the first time, but we still had to pack our bags a little bit. So we threw some stuff in our bags. Again, like you said earlier, actually great tactic for drawing things out and being able to not have to labor in the hospital. So we're laboring at home, we're packing bags, we're getting ready to head out the door. And we did call beforehand, and we were like, we're pretty sure she's in labor, but it's still 6 minutes probably apart right now. And they were like, we'll give you a call back within an hour. I said to my sister, I don't know if I have an hour. I said, what do we do? And she's like, no, we just go. We go to the hospital now. And I said, okay, let's do that. Get in the car. I'm sitting in the back seat so that I can stand up whenever I have a contraction because I can't sit through them. And at this point, get to the hospital. They make us check in at the ER. I'm standing in the ER, checking in, and I'm telling the lady that's checking me in that all but telling her, "You need to do this faster." But finally getting upstairs and to triage, and they go through the same check-in that they just did downstairs. I'm like, "What are we doing here?" So, we're doing that whole
I
thing
know.
again. In the meantime, they're trying to get, I think it's an IV port, or I don't know all the
Mhm.
medical
Mhm.
terms, but they just wanted to get that in me just in case something happens that they have to do something later. So at this point, obviously, I didn't need any help with getting contractions going. Water still hadn't broken at this point. So right now it was like the pain. I was considering nitrous cuz it hurt. But I was
Mhm.
managing all of that time when I was having all those contractions from the 10 a.m. to the um time that we went in at 4. I had been practicing. I had been practicing for my whole uh, I don't know, even since there's something that I can feel. I don't know if anybody else has ever experienced this, but I can feel like contractions almost since my like second trimester. It's the weirdest thing where you
Mm.
just feel like a rise and a fall. And I can feel that. So every time I would feel that during like I would just practice
Mm.
relaxing my whole body. So that is like the difference between my first birth and my second birth. I actually learned how to relax everything from my jaw to my shoulders, my head, letting it like dang, I don't know. Seems
Be a
yeah,
rag
pretty
doll.
much. Pretty
Be a
much.
rag doll.
So I had
Mhm.
practiced that and practiced that and practiced that, along with doing some like pelvic floor, just like learning how to loosen that. Um, and just some like deep squat, like stretches too. So I had
Mhm.
done a lot more like preparation on the physical side of things, not just like the want to do it, but like actually learning
Mhm.
how to do it and how to manage it. So, through all those contractions, I had been doing that at home, just like stop in the middle of the contraction, whatever you're doing, and relax. And then being able to talk through a lot of it. And then that's actually how I came to know when in my second birth what transition is. That's when I stopped talking. I stopped talking. I stopped like being able to really communicate in the transition stage. So we get in there. They're trying to put the port in. They couldn't get it. They could not get that. It took probably an hour for them to just trying to stick. Yes, yes.
No.
It might sound.
Did you ever wanna just go, "Oh, just I'm fine. I'll if I need an IV, we'll do that
I
then." Did you ever feel
I
like saying
did
that?
once. So they had gotten me out of the triage room because they said to me, "If you ever feel pressure at any point, tell us." And I said, "Oh, I feel pressure." And they said, "We got to get you out of here." And I said, "Okay." And so they put me in their like spare room that they never use. Didn't have the nitrous in either room. So blessing in disguise because I did want to go unmedicated. But I might have caved had it been there. And they ended up I at one point I did want them to stop trying, and I did. It was like right before they finally got it. I did say to my sister, Can they just stop?" And I was about ready to stop at that point, but then they finally got it.
Mhm.
But they had switched me from triage where they had tried a couple times and put me in this spare room. Well, at that point, I'm not kidding you, it was shift change. It was, everyone on the floor was trying to put this IV in me, and, the
Wait, this is a
mhm,
good opportunity also to
yeah,
say for listeners who are listening, that we can
yes,
decline anything if a woman doesn't want an IV, she can say, "No, no, thank you. I know it's hospital policy, no, thank you." All she
yeah,
has to say is, "No, thanks." And yeah, they might look at you and give you, like, like, "Oh, okay, she's a non-compliant, and now they're gonna go have to talk to the charge nurse and see what to do next and blah, blah, blah." Just I know it's so hard as women to not want to people please in those moments like that, but we women have to remember, like, it's your birth, it's your body, like, you can decide what you do or don't want them to do to you, and, even though it doesn't feel like you have a choice, you do, and so I just wanna remind everybody
yep,
of
that's a
that.
good reminder. Oh, very
Okay.
good reminder because I was really bruised after all those sticks.
Yeah.
Um, so, very good reminder that you can stop, and also in hindsight, with that they probably could have just tried to do that after, the baby was born, like, if they still wanted it or needed it, and I mean, I did do a slow drip, or a small dose of Pitocin afterwards just for because of hemorrhaging. I've known a couple of people more recently who hemorrhaged after birth, so I did decide to do that after everything was done, but so that's initially why I was okay with them continuing to try, but
Mm.
then it did just get too much, and it was one of those things that it was like, I don't know if it was a good distraction. Obviously, it wasn't, like, super good. It was a distraction, but at the same time, it also did
Mhm.
hinder me from being able to they did a good job of pausing while I was having a contraction, but I just all I wanted was the lights off and people to leave the room, really, but there was probably 15 people in the room at that point because of the
Mm.
shift change. It's a university hospital, that I was at, so they all had students with them, so it was like each person had a student. It was shift change,
Uh,
and they were all trying anesthesiology ended up coming in, as well as every other nurse on the floor at some point to try to get the port in. So, at one point there.
oh, that's another good point.
Mhm.
Another good point that's right. That
Yeah,
is too many people
yeah,
for a
it was a
laboring
lot.
woman. Like that does not support the physiological process of birth to have that many strangers circling a laboring woman. Like her alarm bells are going off. And so another thing, just to remind listeners, like you can ask, please, no students in the room. I want as few people in the room as possible, like, and
Yeah.
definitely that's, something that you can voice if
Oh, yeah.
obviously.
Completely true, and even to think about that if you are going into a university hospital or even some,
Yeah.
hospitals that aren't university hospitals, they will have students too, and it's great. It is great for them to have students, and students do need to learn at some points. But if it just becomes like the sheer number of people is too much, or I was present at somebody else's birth, and I won't share too much of that since it's not my story to tell. But I do remember that somebody on shift was having every time there was like a cervical check to be done, it was like it had to be done twice so that the student so it
Oh,
was one thing that it was like, "Oh, I didn't realize that's how students learn." They do learn that way. And some people are okay with it and some people aren't. So just a good reminder for people listening, like if you're okay with that, great, because some people need to learn, but if you're not okay with that, like, it's okay, like you said, it is okay to say no. Um,
so we'll bring you back. So you're in the side
mhm.
room that they never use. There's 15 people coming in and out. Shift change. Finally, you get
Mhm.
the IV in.
Yes.
I
Oh,
think
you're
that's where
fine,
you
you're
were.
fine. Yeah, so they finally got the IV in, and, I had at this point, actually, because there were so many people in the room, um my poor husband, great guy. Wanted to be there, but he had gotten, like, shoved up against a wall. And so at my sister was kind of, like, near me. She ended up being, like, just the right height for me to kinda, like, lean on. So she was the one that was a little bit closer to me at that point. And, there was one nurse who had come in, and she was doing some, like, pressure just, like, pressure points on my back, which was very helpful. Um but other than that, at this point, we're just breathing through those contractions, just surrendering to them as they're coming. And I did have, for me personally, I don't mind a couple of treks here and there, to see how far along I am or how. I don't know. For some reason, I know it's not foolproof, but if I know what my dilation is, it's like, okay, I can keep going. I don't know. It's a mental thing, I think, for me. So
Totally mental.
I did
Mhm.
have them check me. And at one point, I remember I was at Nate and they were like, okay, we still have just a little bit longer. But within like 2 contractions from that, I said, "I'm pushing." And they said, "Stop pushing." And I said, "No,
Mm.
I can't stop pushing. My body is pushing." And they said, "Can we check you?" I said, "Sure." And so they checked me again and they're like, "Oh, yeah, you're at a 10." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm pushing and I can't stop it." So it was like, I was at this point, I am assuming that was a fetal ejection reflex. And I assume that if I would have just let that continue to happen, my baby would have come out. But I did end up going in a sideline position, which was fine. That it was a very good position for me personally. I tried to push once. I did try once on my back. No, that was not good. Not good at all. And then I quickly turned to my side and it was like one push and she was out. So,
Side
yeah.
lying is a beautiful
Yeah.
position for sure. It takes so much pressure
Yep.
off of your perineum. It's not so much
Yep.
downward gravity.
So,
Yes,
I
love
did
that.
end up tearing again with, my second, and they were both second-degree tears for both my first and my
Mm.
second. But just a word of encouragement. This was something I was actually really nervous for to happen again. I was nervous that I would tear again because the first time I couldn't sit. I couldn't sit comfortably for months. And come to find out, not every second degree tear is created equal. I don't know if it was the way they stitched me up the second time, if it was better, or if it was just different how I tore, but it wasn't as bad the second time.
Yeah. And I think probably you weren't
Yeah,
pushing for 3 hours on
yeah,
your pelvic
yep,
floor. It's so different when your body is doing a lot of the work for you and you can
yeah,
feel what's happening. Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
understand for
I
sure.
can looking back at it, the 3 minutes it took me to push out my second and the 3 hours it took me to push out, it's just there's no way just the feeling it's missing the feeling of it happening is almost like it's a guide rail, like, the feeling is like a guide rail showing you how to do the pushing,
Mhm.
and I never realized that that was obviously we're designed it's designed like that for a reason, it's to show us how to push.
What
Yeah.
a pearl of wisdom. Yes. Yes. The sensations are there for a reason. This isn't all just you know, like just
Yeah.
pain without a purpose. Like, no,
Yep,
it's all part of the plan.
exactly. So, yeah, I think that's
Mhm.
about it for the story of my second, but is there anything that you want me to expound on or
So imagine you are a woman who has not yet had her, natural birth yet, but she really wants to. Maybe she's had an experience, first of all, that wasn't ideal, was maybe had a lot of interventions that she wasn't planning for or didn't really want. And so she's wanting a natural birth with her next baby, but she's not sure that she's capable or just doubtful of the process or maybe still has a lot of fear around birth. What would you
yeah.
tell her?
Good question. I actually think that some people might say it's just as much mental as it is physical, but I actually experienced it the reverse, and I would say it's just as much like preparing for the physical side of it, and learning how to surrender to your contractions. But preparation is one of the just knowing how to surrender to those contractions made all the difference in my own birth, as well as the support. Part of me sometimes thinks that the reason I went into labor was because I felt like safe enough that my mom was there for my daughter and my sister was on her way. Like she showed up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and at 3:30 I went to the hospital. So and she had a 9 hour drive. So, that was it she was yeah, she had a 9 hour drive
Wild.
and got here at 3 and we were so, I don't know. I I don't know why or how that all happened, but except for the fact that it was like, "Okay, I think that I could, like, let my body just knew everything's ready now. We're ready." So, support and prepping for the physical part or just knowing yeah, like I said, knowing how to surrender to those contractions.
Yeah, and I loved earlier you talked about learning, like, anytime you'd notice and I've heard a lot of women talk about that where they have little
Mhm.
tightenings all throughout their pregnancy actually, and it's so great because that gives you a little, like, sneak peek of what it might, a very mild w form of what
Mhm.
you're gonna experience in labor, and so you practiced surrendering and just, like, melting your whole body, pelvic floor, jaw, shoulders, all of that. Was there anything else you did to prepare for the physical
Well,
sensations?
definitely threw that comb method out that a lot of people talk about, like taking the comb and squeezing
Mhm.
it, because your hands should
I like
also
comb.
be nice and open and relaxed. So, but physically, is there anything else?
Mhm.
I walked a lot more for just during my pregnancy. I didn't do a lot of strenuous exercise, like no lifting at this point in life. But not that I know that's a thing and that can be, but me personally, I just did a lot more walking than I did with my first pregnancy. My first pregnancy, I was very stationary at a desk. I was working a full-time job at that point for a lot of it. And then by the time I wasn't working the full-time job anymore, we had just moved here and I was already starting to swell up like a balloon. So, fair.
That brings up another wonderful point. So no sign of preeclampsia in this second pregnancy, no
Well,
elevated blood
I did
pressures, no
I
swelling?
did do the
Okay.
aspirin that they typically or that they recommend if you have had it in the past. I can't remember when I started taking it, but that was something that I did going into this birth.
Yeah, and
Mm-mm.
so you didn't end up having any
Nope,
swelling though
nope.
or elevated blood
Yeah,
pressures? No?
yep.
Wonderful.
It was
That's awesome. Okay. So I love that. I love that you totally and in order to learn how to surrender our bodies, I feel like it's so important that we learn what our uterus is actually doing. The what you're talking about surrendering to each
mhm.
contraction, relaxing fully reminds me so much of the Bradley method, home birth method. Have you ever read that book? I don't know.
Whatever
No.
you were gonna say about
Yeah.
it.
Well, I like that book. I like parts of that book, but one part that I really do like is they have a beautiful diagram of the uterus as a bag of muscles and just like the way they talk about this bag of muscles and how it contracts and
Hmm,
how it pushes your baby out. It was just really eye-opening. And so it's important to know that's what you're surrendering to. It's like, you're not surrendering to just like some like force outside of you. Like, no, it's in you. It's right here. It's like, just having that visual was, I mean, really helpful for me too, to understand what my body was doing and understand what I had to let go
mhm,
in order for that to
yep.
work.
Interesting. I will have to
Yeah.
keep tuck that
Okay.
away. We're
Yeah.
hoping to have more. I'll have to tuck that one away.
Yeah. Do you do you think you're gonna have another
My
hospital birth?
sister, this time, she's like, "Maybe we should just look up that birth center." I go back and forth just because I've had the preeclampsia. I don't know. Uh, we do have one in one of the larger
Yeah.
cities that's closer to us, and we're only about 40 minutes away from there, so
Mhm.
it wouldn't be too bad. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yep.
handy. Yeah, that's a good in between option, I think. If there's any fear around being at home, like that won't make home birth work well. And I hear a lot of good things about birth centers. I feel like wherever a woman
Yeah.
feels safest is where she should birth.
Always pro, like you said, where you are going to feel the safest is probably where
Mhm.
you're going to thrive the best, and that's when labor is going to do better things for you. I appreciate when I meet people that would prefer to do a medicated birth, but they can appreciate that I prefer to do an unmedicated birth. And I
Mhm.
also have that same appreciation for them. Like, if you want to do a medicated birth, totally go for it. If that's what makes you feel safest, great. But I will say if
Mhm.
there's any little desire to do it unmedicated, do it. Yeah. Yeah.
So it was
Yep,
worth it.
for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I guess I also didn't ask, like, why did you want to have an unmedicated birth? Like, women have so many different reasons. Some women just don't wanna have any drugs in their system or in their baby system when they give birth. Some want to feel every sensation of the process, wanna know what their bodies are capable of. Some, are doing it just because they want to. Like, what
Yeah.
what was your motivation
I
for
tend
having
to
a natural birth?
probably be on the crunchier side of things. So that's probably where I go. But at the same time, I can appreciate modern medicine when it's needed. So obviously, I needed it for different things in my first birth, and I was thankful for that. But then plus that prior of just like my grandma and my mom having done it. But going into the second one, I knew it was because I knew I was missing something when it came to pushing the baby out. Like, I couldn't feel anything but maybe a little bit of pressure there, like, where her head was. And it was just like,
Mhm.
"Why can't I figure out how to push this baby out?" And then as I kind of thought about it more later, it was like, probably because you couldn't feel what was going on. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I keep thinking of last minute questions. Okay, we didn't
Oh,
talk about your
okay.
placentas. How did I forget? So I'm guessing in your first birth it was like just a like cord traction. The OB probably dealt with it, or
I
were you
was
involved in
not
your placenta at all?
involved with when you say involved, like, What are we talking about?
Yeah, not even well, because when you have an
Uh-huh.
epidural, you can't really stand up or anything. So typically they handle the
Mm-hmm.
third stage is what they call it, and they do manual cord traction and slowly guide the placenta out once
Mm-hmm.
they think it's detached. But this is like a really critical part of labor, and I'm women who give birth naturally are like really reclaiming this
Oh,
part of the birth process, and
okay.
yeah, and they're doing it themselves. So, yeah, I squatted over a bowl with my second one, and it was
Uh,
really very powerful to be able to do that.
mm-hmm.
I don't know, just finish my birth all the way. Like it was my birth, and I kind of finished it. I don't know. So I don't know if you had
I
any story to share about
I don't know if
your placenta
I don't know if I
or
have
in your second birth.
heard or seen anything about this. So I did not. They did finish. They finished for me. But
Yeah.
yes, so I did not do any of the after stuff with my placenta either. I know a lot of people like
Yeah.
take it, encapsulate it, and that kind of stuff. My first one, I wasn't comfortable doing that with because I don't think it was a very good placenta. I actually had even some it was a marginal cord insertion with that. So the cord wasn't in
Mhm.
the right spot, and so they had to monitor me a little bit more for that. Or and afterwards, I did want to see the placenta and so I did take a small peek at it because I was curious as to whether or not it actually wasn't in the right place. But I can't even at this point I can't even remember.
I also had a marginal cord insertion, and they didn't ever see it on an ultrasound, and I'm so glad they didn't because it would have been extra needless worry, because when my placenta did come out, she was like, "Whoa, your cord is way on the
Really?
edge of your placenta," baby's placenta. Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, great,
Yeah.
cool, he's whatever," you know what I mean?
There's actually that was an issue that I faced a little bit in my transfer of care because they ended up telling me that they the one of the hospitals that I was looking to transfer to said we don't have an appropriate NICU, so you might have to go to this other place. And then they weren't getting back to me as to whether or not they would accept me. And so then I did end up having to find a different place to go to, but then I had to figure out whether or not because my husband's a pastor, we have do a share program instead of insurance. So whether or not that would work at the other place where the NICU was. So it was a little bit of a pain.
I'm
We
sorry that you had
survived.
to go
We're
through
here.
that. Wonderful. Well, is there anything else you would like to
I
share
don't
before
know
we
if there's
close out?
anything else that I can think of off the top of my head, but just thank you very much for having me and listening to my story.
It has been such a joy. I'm honored. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining me tonight, Michaela. Thank you for listening to Your Redemptive Birth. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave a review on your listening platform to help this podcast reach the women it needs to reach. If you have a redemptive birth story you would like to share, please email me at sarah@yourredemptivebirth.com. I would love to hear from you. Let's spread the redemptive birth word together.